All right, thank all of you all for coming, especially with such short notice. I am Reverend T. Sheri Dickerson, Executive Director and Lead Organizer of Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City Chapter. We also have various other social justice and racial equity organizations that are standing with us today. You may notice that we are in what we would consider casual attire, but I want to say thank you to everyone who responded to our call this morning to come out and assist in the cleanup of the damage that had been done across the city. And also we want to clarify that much of all of the damage that occurred was not during an event that was actually organized and sanctioned by the Black Lives Matter Oklahoma City chapter, as has been reported by some of the colleagues, some of your colleagues. I'm certainly not going to point any of you all out. But we're also here, it locked. We're also here today to talk about the list of demands and what we are asking as far as accountability from various entities and organizations. I forgot to spell my name. I see some of you all looking at me. It is R-E-V period T period Sheri SHERI Dickerson. I'm going to go ahead and get started, but again, we do want to thank everyone who showed up again today to help with the cleanup. It is, we are commemorating and observing and remembering what Black people in Tulsa 99 years ago on this day was dealing with the aftermath of the Greenwood and the Black Wall Street massacre. And so surely they were having to deal with, we're dealing with a very small fraction of what happened, because there was a massacre and they murdered and pillaged an entire community that was thriving of African American people. So we do stand in solidarity today with Tulsa and saying that we remember and we will not forget. Oklahoma City. In light of recent events of police violence and escalation, and out of concern for all people, we, on behalf of Oklahoma City's Black community and all Oklahomans of conscience, we will hold a press conference to issue the following demands to the city leaders responsible for the crisis at hand. We will also address further actions to take place in the event of our demands, if our demands are not met. We demand an apology from Police Chief Wade Gourley and Mayor David Holt, and ask for the immediate resignation of Chief Gourley, whose lack of leadership resulted in aggressive actions by the police toward peaceful protesters, escalating tensions and resulting in violence that could have been and should have been avoided. We also demand the immediate release without charges of all incarcerated protesters who were arrested for nonviolent offenses or resisting arrest, while defending themselves or their loved ones from unlawful use of excessive force by the Oklahoma City Police Department and the Sheriff's Office. We're asking that disciplinary action and termination be taken against all police officers who violently attacked peaceful protesters while they were standing in their right to assemble and to protest. The immediate installation of an independent citizens complaint review board for the Oklahoma City Police Department, which will have authority to review all complaints, including use of force and discipline of offending officers. Mayor Holt, we're asking for a meeting within 24 hours. We have had communications directly from Mayor Holt, and he is agreeing to that meeting, so I do want to mention that. Provision of training in de-escalation tactics for all Oklahoma City police officers, which must include training in interactions with persons who have mental health issues, as well as training that includes cultural sensitivity. On a personal level, I do not know what type of training or the curricula is, asking people to simply act with compassion, humanity, and sensibility. The immediate public release of arrest records of Olene Jefferson Jr. and the body cam footage of all police involved in his arrest, and the footage from the Oklahoma County Jail, where they indicated that a minor use of force resulted in the death of Mr. Jefferson. The immediate public release of all video footage of the Oklahoma City incident involving and resulting in the death of Mr. Derek Ollie Sr. The arrest and prosecution of David Stewart for the kidnapping and illegal confinement of Mr. Travis Miller Sr. on May 11th. Justice for the family of El Ray Barber, who was shot and killed by Oklahoma City Police Department on Christmas Eve 2019. Justice for Rolana Keeler, who was shot by Oklahoma City Police Department on Christmas Eve 2019 while unarmed. They indicated that she was shot because Mr. Barber had fired shots, and the ballistics and the reports came out that he had never done so. It was the Oklahoma City police officers that fired the first, second, and only shots that were fired in that incident. Mayor Holt, we're asking you to commit to the construction of a grocery store on the east side of Oklahoma City to be completed within 6 months. The Northeast Oklahoma City communities are dealing with a food apartheid. It is not a food desert because it's apartheid because it was taken from us. And we are also asking for the granting of clemency and immediate release of wrongfully charged and convicted member of our community, our brother, Julius Jones, and we're asking that Governor Smith do this immediately. These are our list of demands. We have one additional statement from Mr. Jess Eddy.
We've all observed in recent media coverage, and those of us who've been on the ground engaged in peaceful protesting, that members engaged in the Oklahoma City metro area have committed acts of vandalism and performed violence. As a white man engaged in the business of empowering my black brothers and sisters, it's important that I address those specific white individuals throughout this community who are leading and doing the predominance of any acts of vandalism and violence. If you want to assist black people in their struggle to be free, to live, and to have justice and peace, you do that in the business of empowerment. That does not mean that you take the initiative to act in your own capacity, to engage in destruction of property, to engage in aggression, or anything that constitute a distraction from the beautiful messages of hope and peace and prosperity for this community that has been deprived from this community for hundreds of years. White actors who are going out into the streets, who are committing acts of vandalism, which the media is exploiting to damage the image of the beautiful blackness that is arising up in this country to protest the injustice against them, is an abomination and a sacrilege on the principles of us white people who will stand with black people in their fight for justice. We strongly condemn any acts which are not explicitly designed to support black folks in their struggle. We cannot tolerate white people taking black issues and using it as a means to affect their own motives and attempts at whatever they choose to do. This includes all of the things that we've seen on the news. Those of us who have been on the ground know that it is the white actors that are throwing water bottles, which is not a form of violence that should stipulate and cause rubber bullets and tear gas. But we know that it is the white actors that are doing the predominance of this. And so with love and respect and condemnation in hand, I ask you, please cease and desist from this conduct and let these black people speak their truths clearly and without your interruption. Thank you.
We don't have the privilege to throw water bottles.
Let me say one more piece about that. White people have privilege. We have privilege. When I was arrested on Saturday, I was charged with disorderly conduct. I acted the same as the black brothers and sisters that went to jail, but their charges were stacked with resisting arrest and assault and battery on police officer, and it's obscene. So when white people escalate, we put black lives at risk, and they do not have the privilege to get bailed out of jail like we do, to hire attorneys like we can, and we are jeopardizing their safety and livelihood. Let these people speak their truth. They will ask for your assistance, and they will tell you what that assistance can be. Please listen. Thank you.
We'll take questions.
What will happen if your demands aren't met?
If our demands aren't met, we are going to announce a series of direct actions, and we're going to continue demanding justice for the African American community as well as our brown communities, those poor people, and all of those that are underrepresented and marginalized by white supremacy.
I know there was one that you said you'll give about 6 months, but how long are you going to give each issue to be resolved before you go forward?
Hopefully, those in leadership understand that this is an urgent need and they should want to respond within 24 hours, just like we're asking the mayor to. We've waited 400 years for justice. We're tired and we don't want to wait any longer.
Does Black Lives Matter plan to host or plan to do any upcoming rallies on the street?
So it's not necessarily yesterday. It was an actual form of protest. We do practice Kingian nonviolent strategy. However, we stress the fact that when there are tensions, even though we are peaceful, it does not mean that we are not going to continue to pursue aggressive justice. So we will be announcing other actions. They are coming, and yes, there will be some this week.
Would there be direction for BLM people on the street if they see bad actors popping up into the evening, like what Jessica's talked about? Would there be conflict between BLM and these?
There hasn't been conflict thus far. When we have those who are outside agitators who are deliberate in their intentions to, one, make bad reflection upon the Black Lives Matter organizers and those that stand with us. That's not something that we necessarily should have to be concerned about, but we do have training in place on how to interact and the proper response.
At what point yesterday would you say the organized part of the protest ended and those other actors came in?
Basically, the event that happened at 36th and Kelly, that we actually ended and dispersed at 4:30 p.m. We did announce that we were aware that there was another rally being held at the Capitol. We did not organize that, but we advised those that were in attendance at ours, if they chose to, we just provided information about other opportunities to protest.
When will you be meeting with David Holt? You said within 24 hours?
Yes.
And anything specifically that you want to address with him that you can tell us?
We're going to talk about some of the things that we asked about on over the weekend, especially talking about how interaction is done and the lack of leadership and the silence. White silence is completely offensive. And so when we don't hear our leaders speaking about the atrocities that are happening to those who are standing in protest, we have a problem with that. So we're going to immediately address that, as well as asking about the process and cultural sensitivity for training all throughout the municipal employees.
What time is that meeting happening?
We have not set up that meeting. We just had conversation or communication from Mayor Holt about 5 minutes before we started the press conference.
Can you talk about specific use of force by police that warrants Chief Gourley to resign?
Black lives that end.
You mentioned you mentioned use of force during the protests that were part of the reason why you want Chief Gourley to resign. I was wondering if you could talk about some of those.
Yes, the interaction, it was a totally peaceful protest. People were raising their voices, and the actual Oklahoma City Police Department, some of the officers were the ones that escalated the situation. There was no call out, and it continued to escalate all throughout the night.
So you're telling me that he was saying that they don't think rubber bullets were necessary. You don't think tear gas was necessary. What do you think would be necessary to disperse a crowd that large when it is announced over a PA system that they are unlawfully assembled? What other suggestions would you have for the police department to handle dispersing a crowd?
Our suggestion is to understand that they were not.
What about the first?
I'm asking her now.
She is one of the leadership of Black Lives Matter, and she is a black woman, so she deserves respect.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Come forward, please. So what other suggestions would you have for PD to help disperse a crowd like that?
My comment was, the state seems to be very fond of the Second Amendment. What about the first? What was unlawful about that assembly? It was a weekend. There was no significant traffic or business being obstructed. What is wrong? Since when did the right of the people to assemble and to bring their grievances to the government become null and void? That is the central issue of American so-called democracy. If that is off the table, then everything that we do every day of our lives, every assumption about this government is then null and void. So explain to me, somebody, please. I learned that in 7th grade American government class. Explain to me what was unlawful, what was so scary about angry black and white and brown people getting together and saying, stop killing us. They were not brandishing automatic weapons in the State House.
Right.
Okay? That was dangerous. That was aggressive. They were standing
And that was white
there,
people.
and that was very white. But other than the color of their skin, and predominantly, and the fact that they were unarmed, what was the difference and what made them in an unlawful assembly? So when you can explain that to us, then maybe we can comment upon your question, but your question is specious.
Let me let you, Miss Landry, please spell your name.
Camille Landry, CamilleLandry.
I was down there Sunday. From what I saw when the police were aggressive is that when stuff was being thrown at them, is what I saw. Then when they started taking action towards the crowd, when they were attacked with either water bottles or rock or jumping on the police car. So I'm just wondering, it's a tense situation. It's a bad situation that happens when these agitators do this. I'm just wondering, what other means would there be to disperse a crowd like that? Do you have any suggestions?
Okay.
I know it's hard.
Listen.
I know it's hard to answer.
Let me just put it in these terms. I've raised a lot of children. How many people here are parents? Anybody else here a parent? Am I the only parent in this group? When your 2-year-old throws a temper tantrum and kicks you, not that the protesters were childish, and kicks you, do you respond by punching her? You do not. Force needs to be proportionate, and the role of the police is to protect and serve the community, not to stroke their own egos. So, if somebody threw one of the rocks from the garden up there, from the landscaping up there, or a water bottle at the police, did it endanger the lives of the police? Did it endanger city property in any significant way? Was anybody in harm? However, a reporter, a photojournalist in Ohio was blinded by a police rubber bullet. People have had heart attacks as a result of being hit by a rubber bullet or a beanbag projectile. People have had asthma attacks and had to be hospitalized as a result of tear gas. A protester the other night had a gash on his leg and a burn as a result of the tear gas canister. Members of your own staff of the media have been choked by tear gas when they are doing their jobs, wearing their network insignia, clearly visible to the police. Okay, so it's a disproportionate use of force at a time when nobody was in danger.
And also, those that were arrested that received injuries, they received no medical care.
Right.
Does Black Lives Matter know of any protests going on tonight? And if so, how do you guys hope it's handled?
So we do not, we don't know of any protests being held tonight. If our demands are not met, and we don't get responses in a timely manner, and we're hoping to get some by the end of the day, we may form one. And you said, what was your second question?
If so, how do you hope it's handled?
It's going to be handled to where we're continued. It is going to be organized. It is going to be peaceful, and it is going to continue to demand justice.
You mentioned a kind of a cutoff point where you hope those demands are met. What time frame are you thinking right now?
So we made a specific request for a conversation and a meeting with the mayor within 24 hours. We're asking for the, and we gave a 6-month ask on the grocery store within the Oklahoma City community. I would say by the end of this week, we should certainly have a response about our list of demands.
You mentioned by the end of today. Is it possible that there will be protests tonight if certain demands are met?
Protests are always possible. When the people are united, we will never be defeated.
Ms. Dickerson,
Yes.
as far as what went on Saturday night, we know at one point that that at least one county vehicle was set on fire, at least 2 vehicles that were vandalized, spray painted with police vehicles. At what point, what would you like to see officers do from that point on?
First off, when that happened, there were some of us that were in attendance of that, and what we witnessed were actually white persons who were committing those particular actions. We do not know who they are. We knew that some had been identified by other people as outside instigators. We did, myself and several other community leaders and community organizers went out on Saturday and Sunday asking for everyone to remain peaceful and to disperse once it became unsafe. And I was speaking for the safety of community members. There were children out there, literal children. I saw a 5-year-old. So we also need the officers to understand that their responses could literally kill young children, and it needs to be appropriate. We're going to take 2 more questions, if there are.
What do you have to say to the people who damage places like the Memorial, someplace that's so central to Oklahoma City?
So we are not asking for people to cause damage to structures. We actually, as an organization, called for the assistance, and we're all dressed like this because we've been out trying to help clean up the damage that was done. And so I'm going to say this from a personal stance. When we're making statements of calling for when we're calling for things to be abolished and disbanded, we're talking about the system. Until the culture of white supremacy and police brutality are changed and totally abolished, we are still going to see brutality, violence, and end of life for Black and brown persons. We're going to see the type of behavior and the type of treatment which is inhumane in places like the Oklahoma County Jail. We're going to see that they want to continue to have ICE agents within those jails. And that is inhumane. That is a level of injustice that I can barely speak on without becoming overly emotional. And humanity of all is never up for debate.
reporters ask you over and over again, are what the protesters doing okay? Are what the cops doing okay? Instead of asking you why 3 police officers are still free.
Thank you.
One of the things that we talked about and we've been talking about, because Oklahoma is number 2 in officer involved fatalities and number 1 in incarceration and number 1 in incarceration of black women and number 1 in incarceration of people of color, is the fact that we are not focusing on what is important and what systems should be changed. That was one of the most relevant questions here today. The catalyst of this particular series of protests was the egregious treatment and murder of George Floyd that we witnessed. However, I want to tell you, twice in Oklahoma, just in 2019, we witnessed similar situations to where the life of Derek Ali and Mr. Anthony Mealy in Ada was literally the same, and they were about 10 to 13 minutes that we watched while they mocked those persons laying on the ground saying, "I can't breathe." We are tired of not being listened to. We are tired of not being treated with the dignity and respect that they expect. And we are tired of them not doing their jobs, because they are here to protect and serve, but they are protecting and serving their own interests and not those of Oklahoma, and especially not black and brown persons. Thank you.